Hey everyone. All right, this video is going to be about baking out our floaters. So let's do a little bit of that. So we have our high poly here, and we have our floaters. I've attached all of my floaters together to one mesh, just kind of because I like to. You can have them as separate meshes. It's all up to you. But that doesn't really matter at this point. So the first thing we're going to do with our floaters, and it's something that, once you do this a bunch of times, you'll kind of get used to doing early on. I don't really want to tell you guys to do that beforehand, just so you kind of got a good sense of where these things go and what they look like. It's always nice to see your mesh, but what we're going to do is we're going to take all our floaters and we're going to inset them right into our mesh here. The reason for that is when we're going to be baking our low poly, we want to have the exact same kind of like distance from our low poly as the high poly was, just so the low poly fully encompasses all the floaters as well. So just go through and take all your floaters and just sink them in, where they're supposed to be. Do a double check to make sure that you have placed them exactly where you kind of intended to place them. There we go. So go through and do that with your mesh. So buttons, all your little floatery things, whatever they happen to be, right? Sink all those guys in. All right, I've already done a couple of these guys here. All right, these guys look like they're not in the position I really wanted them to be. All right, let's take a look. That looks fine. Those guys look fine. All right, cool. So once you're done that, you have your floaters. I like to assign the same pivot for my floaters as for my other stuff, just so I know they're all the same. And I'm going to do that to the low poly because apparently I did not do that before. All right, so what you're going to do is you're going to take your low poly mesh that you have here, the one that you use to capture your fancy pants mesh with, and you're going to hit Control V, which is going to bring up the copy options. By default, instance will be on, so make sure you do not leave that on because instance will affect both meshes once you have copied them over, and you do not want that because we're going to be doing some very, very terrible things. So make sure copy is set on, hit OK. You can actually, before you hit OK, you can hit low floater, whatever. And so select that and your floaters and just move them over to the side. That way we have a low poly for all of this jazz and a low poly for all of this. You can hide the other two things. I just like working this way because it's kind of clean and just kind of off to the side. And it's all well and good. So that is that. So we have that. Now what I like to do is I like to kind of optimize my low poly mesh. I'm going to get rid of the projector here. And you notice here we have our floaters, the guys in blue. There's not a lot of them, but there's a lot of geometry in the low poly right now. A lot of stuff I'm not going to be really needing for a bake. So why keep that around? Why not just use the faces that we're actually going to be using to bake? So that's kind of what I like to do. So I'm going to go through here and just select all the faces that I feel are going to be used to bake my floaters. So, these guys, maybe like this guy here, definitely that guy. These really complex, gross looking meshes. Nope, not you. Try and join the party, not cool. Right. Sometimes pain in the butt, you put on ignore back facing. That may or may not solve some of your issues. Looks like it is not helping me much right now for some reason. This is being really silly. Sometimes Max is a pile of poop when it comes to selecting things. Just select the stupid face. There you go. It's not that hard. Alright, so what do we have? We got those guys. Let me finish selecting this thing up here. Sometimes I go a little overboard. Let's see, that guy there. There's some floaters over here, and that little guy. And that looks to be all of them. Oh, I missed one back here. Oh, and I missed this little guy up front. Cool, so that seems like it's all of them. Once I have all my faces selected, I'm going to hit Control I, which is going to invert my selection here. And I'm going to hit delete. Oh, and decided to autosave right as I hit delete, which is always terrifying. Hit delete. There we go. Now we have a much simpler low poly. I could even get rid of some of this stuff too. I can add cuts and things to my meshes here because it really doesn't matter. We just need the unwrap. We don't need um, the actual geometry of it. So I can delete and optimize some of my stuff. What the hell is this thing? I must have selected that by accident. All right, it looks pretty good. So with this, this is going to be much easier to bake our stuff from. And it should save some time too with our trial and error. So we have that. We have our low floaters. We have our high floaters. Our recent next form just for good measure. Now if we take a look, if I throw an unwrap modifier on here, our unwraps they're still exactly where they need to be. They haven't changed even though we deleted all that stuff. It's just a lot of a smaller texture to deal with, which is awesome. So that being said, we're going to select our low floaters. We're going to do the same thing as we did before. We're going to go to render to texture. We're going to just adjust this because it's being funny. We're going to enable projection mapping. We're going to go to pick. We're going to pick our floaters. We'll give it some time to decide on the terrible cage, which looks like this. Reset. I'm going to like up this a little. I'm going to put this tolerance down because I don't know what that does. There we go. I'm going to scroll down here. We're going to make sure we add a normal map and a lighting map. I'm not going to bother with the diffuse map because I haven't actually added any colors onto my high poly floaters because they're pretty simple. So I should be able to just kind of pick them up in Photoshop without any problems. Now, the only other part that we're going to do here that's really important for you guys to do that we didn't do for the other one is under your lightings map, there's an element background, which is what background should it use. You need to set this to white. It's going to make your job a lot easier in Photoshop when you're combining textures. If it's black, you're just going to have to do some other stuff, so don't bother with that. I'm going to set this up to be a little bit bigger just so we can do a little test run, and let's hit render. And let's see what it does. So I had this issue last time when I tried to bake this out as well. It's actually baking out my low poly for some reason. So you see here, even though all I selected was my floaters to bake, it's actually baking that those squares out. And if we look at that in Photoshop, let's just get rid of this here. And we open up our texture and we go there. Oh, it actually did not this time, even though it showed that there. So you can ignore me. It actually did a pretty good job there. So remember how I told you don't trust that viewport in Max? Well, it fooled me again. So you can check to see if it looks good in Photoshop. You can even throw it on your low poly like we did with the other one and just have this white texture and see what it looks like. But really, I mean, they should go pretty well unless you have some like really glaring issues. So we just set up a bigger guy here, set the same resolution that you had your base texture as. So I did 2048s for mine, and just hit render. This should definitely take a lot less time than the other guys did. So look at it go. I think this little middle part takes a little bit of time. So you take a break, have a coffee, maybe check what Pokemon are around, maybe check the internet. I'm watching a little bit of Daredevil right now on the side, so I'm not going to play it because that'd be a really weird part of the video. But it's there. It's there. It's having a good time. Maybe I'll check a website over here. Well, let's go on, and it looks like it's pretty much done. Okay, sweet. All right, so we have our texture there. We can close that down. Let's go into Photoshop and just take a look at what we have here. So these are our base textures that we have on the bottom. And I'm going to open up my floater lighting. All right, that's looking pretty nice. Let's take a look at, if you go here under channels, if you go down under alpha, it'll show you what the actual alpha channel of it is and show you if it actually baked out all the side bits and things properly. Now that looks pretty good. And that's it. So we baked out our low poly stuff. There is an issue with these center guys, which I will address once we kind of get everything combined and visible. But for now, I'm going to leave it as is. So the next video I'll do is going to cover combining textures together. And let's take a look at the normal map as well. Ooh, that one did the things. See, that's what I was talking about. I don't want that garbage. What is this shit? So my alpha channel did fine, but my actual normal map had this garbage on here, which I really don't like. But since our alpha channel turned out fine, we can still work with that. So don't worry too much about it. We will leave that as is, and in the next video we shall combine all of this into one magical texture. So stay tuned for that. Thank you.